So, well, I'll just start at the beginning. I think everybody has a vision for their adulthood when they're little kids. You have a dream of what you're going to be and what you're going to have, what you're going to do. And life is doesn't always work out that way.
No.
I think I think that for the most part things have been better than I expected, but in a different way. But there's also been things that I would have never expected. And so
Yeah.
obviously one of those things is our journey with our infertility. So like when you were a kid, I think we both know this. How many kids did you want when you were a kid?
Like 3 or 5. I
5?
wanted a big family just because I've seen how big my family was. So I always wanted a bunch of kids. I mean, but today's economy, I kind of scaled back. I was
I
like,
f-
maybe we could just afford one or two.
yeah, I feel like I always wanted to a boy and girl. It's boring because maybe that's because what was in my family.
Yeah, you and your sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so obviously we got married now 8 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and our journey has been quite different. So in your, I mean, I'll let you start. What has your experience been like the last 8 years?
Well, if you, just like how you were saying, like when you're a kid, you think about what it's going to be like if someone had told the little girl that would play with her dolls and pretend that those were her babies that someday, one day, someone would tell her that she might not be able to have kids or that it would be completely impossible unless she did IVF and, you know, it would probably take multiple rounds of doing that. I would have been devastated, but I'm glad that I got to know the Lord before I started that journey. It was still hard, but I was able to get through it knowing that, God is for me. And I've always had a sense and a feeling that God promised me a family. And so I held on to that hope. And I mean, it's been hard.
Yeah. So let's start, married 8 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
trying, nothing. Doctors say, it's probably not going to happen. If it does, you might die or the baby, something's going to be wrong. We look into all the options. It's like IVF is, you know, tens of thousands, adoption, another tens of thousands. And, I mean, we did doctor's appointments and
Acupuncture.
acupuncture and
Seeing the pregnant women come in and out of that office and just laying there and like looking at these posters on the wall of these women with their babies. That was so difficult.
yeah,
So
and
difficult.
and so we're like praying constantly and just trying to be obedient to what God might be trying to do. So we start fostering because it's like, well, we have the means, we have the home,
We
and
have the
there's
support in our
kids.
family.
Yeah, and there's kids that need it. So it's like, well, let's just try to be a part of the solution. So we foster, and that's that's like all ministry. It's super painful,
Yeah.
and at the same time, it's super rewarding. And I think of Rome, who we get at like 5 weeks old,
Yeah.
and he's the first one to teach us how to be parents.
Yes.
And
And we had to go through it all with that one.
I seriously, I remember I was in Tennessee when you got the call or something like that, and like
Hmm.
it was
You were coming the
crazy.
next day, well, next night, and they called me on a Friday. No, they called me on a Thursday. I picked him up Friday morning. He went to respite care for one night. Then I picked him up Friday morning. My friend came with me, and she drove us back while I was in the back seat with him. And then Sunday, because you came back really late Saturday, so you didn't get to see him
Was
or
that
hold
the
him.
was that the day our flight got canceled and we ended up
Had to drive.
drive?
Yeah.
So really what happened was, well, I mean, but what happened was The flight got delayed. All everybody was saying everything was going to cancel. It's going to cancel. So we decided
Was
let's
it
just rent a car
storms?
and go. I don't know what it was. Let's just take a
Mm.
car and go. So we decide we're gonna forgo the flight. We're gonna get in a car. We're gonna go. And we get in a car. There's like six of us. We have to rent like a suburban to fit all of us, or
Yeah.
whatever.
It
And
was the
we're
teaching team, I believe, that you guys were all up there,
yeah,
either planning for the next
we
year.
were doing something, yeah.
I don't
And
remember.
so then like we're 15 minutes down the road, we're off the airport already, and all of a sudden they call one of us and they're like, "Hi, we're just checking if you're going to be boarding the flight. We're boarding now."
My gosh, I
And
did not know that. You
yeah,
never told me that part.
so we were like, at that point they're boarding. It's too late to turn the car around, go through
Yeah.
TSA again, all that. So 15 minutes into that drive, we knew had we just waited 15 minutes, we would have been on that flight and we would have been home in 2 hours versus a 12-hour drive.
Oh my
But
gosh.
I remember you having him and me meeting him for the first time. And
Sunday, you came off the, you were teaching that Sunday.
yeah,
You came off the stage and you went to the
you were,
family
you
room.
were in the
Yep,
family
I was in the
room. Yeah.
family room when you came. It was feeding time and you got to meet him for the first time.
And Rome obviously changed our life.
Yeah.
We had him for
18 months.
18 months, and his parents did a really good job, and we're
Yes.
able to get him
They're still
again.
doing a great
They're
job.
still doing a great job, and so we love that we still have a relationship with him and his parents. That's totally a God thing in itself. We've had other kids in and out.
Yeah. We've had about 5 children stay with us here. And then one time we had a visitor. She was only with us for like half a day. And
Yeah.
grandma went to come pick her up at the house.
Yeah, and so it was always like, God, we're just gonna do this because everything else is out of our control. Like we don't have the financial means to be able to do what these celebrities are doing stuff, so you just have to do it.
Yeah.
And it literally, I remember it got to the point, I mean, you say it all the time, like we're finally like we're done going to doctors, we're done trying to do it on our own. We're just gonna just like trust God and just live our lives.
Yeah.
And then I remember one day I'm sitting on the couch, right? And I guess what even made you go over there and do that?
So, well, first of all, let's also mention he got reunified with his parents in June. And we ended up, no, was it July? June. It was
June, I
June.
remember, yeah.
June 8th or 9th, one of those two. And we decided we are going to take a trip and we're going to try to get pregnant there, but naturally. We're not going to go see doctors. We're just going to see if a little bit of relaxing is going to help us out. So
Yeah.
we went and got back. I think on the trip, before we got back, I, started my cycle one more time. And Janice, my friend Janice from Tampa, texted me saying, like, I don't know why, but I just felt like praying for you and your infertility, and God kept making me feel like to tell you that it's going to happen soon. And I was like, great, please keep praying for us because we thought it was going to happen this time and it
Yeah,
didn't.
it's like we've been okay, you know how many times we've heard that? I mean, that was the thing.
Yeah,
It's like it'd been 8 years of like well-intentioned people saying things like it's gonna happen for you, it's gonna happen for
yeah.
you. And they
I
meant
had a
well and
dream, I had a
they
word, I
probably
had
believed
this.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
they probably believed it and they probably, meant well and all that. And obviously,
And I appreciate it because it did keep my hope going. Like, okay, God, if you're talking to other people about this, then at least you're covering me in prayer. But it was hard because you would be hopeful and then another 2 or 3 years would go by and still
that's
nothing.
that's the thing. That's what I mean is like when people would say it to me, I guess maybe not you, but to me it was always like, okay, I've heard that before. So
Yeah.
what? So anyway, so she
So
tells
to
you,
me, yeah, to me it came off as hopeful when she was telling me that. I was like, okay, because we had said now we're taking a break from fostering because our hearts were completely shattered with him being gone.
yeah, it was an
God showed
empty
us
house. It
mercy.
was brutal. It was
Yeah,
brutal when he left.
brutal. We didn't know if we would be able to see him again because typically none of the other children that we've seen, and it's typically up to the parents whether or not you can continue in their lives. And when we were not put as the person that was going to be like
Involved in the process
involved
still.
in the process after reunification, we weren't listed in the court documents or anything like that. I was like, oh, we're never going to see this boy again.
I can't tell you how many people were like, I don't know how you guys do this. I don't know how you guys do this. and I didn't know how
I don't
we
know
did
either.
it either, other than God, obviously.
We're like,
But
Jesus, you're gonna take
still,
control.
yeah, but still, it was like harder than I even thought it would be. I mean, to like see his toys here and
Oh, packing up his stuff.
packing up his clothes and stuff, and just not knowing. The thing about life is like when, like, even when we like read the Bible, because we know the end of the story, it totally re you can totally read it minus all of the emotional
Yeah.
things. Like I think when the Israelites are like really struggling in the desert, we read it, we're like, you guys are gonna be out. What are you complaining
Yeah.
about? Like get over it. But to be in the midst of uncertainty and not know, God, are you gonna pull through? Like I know you said you're going to, but your ways are different than mine and you do things differently. So I don't know what pull through means.
Yeah. When it's gonna happen, if I'm gonna be able to see it,
Yeah. So
it's
so that
a
was
lot.
that was brutal. So Janice is reaching out to you. We just lost
Yes.
Rome. Our hearts are broken.
Our hearts are broken. God showed us mercy because his mother reached out and was like, yeah, we'd love to see you guys again. So we thought we were just going to have like another dinner or two or whatever. Anyway, so Janice reaches out and she tells me that. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. But like, I'm literally on my cycle right now. So, okay. But I'm going to keep praying. I appreciate you praying for me. Please continue to pray because we are going to be intentional about this. And we went to Costco like
Yeah. Good old
3 weeks
Costco.
later.
Yeah.
And as soon as you park, I don't know what it was. It made me so nauseous. And I was like, ugh.
Probably my driving.
I was like, probably. I was like, ugh. And you're like, let's just go inside. So we go inside, and I start smelling like as we go towards the back of Costco, I start smelling like meat. And I'm like, I cannot do this. So I leave the cart with you and I go back outside and I wait for you. And since that day, I was like, I think I'm pregnant. I kept
So
telling
you
you for
knew, yeah.
weeks. I
Yeah.
was like, my body feels different. So, having two autoimmune diseases and PCOS, I have to be super aware of like how my body feels, like, and what affected it. I had to always be thinking about like, what did I eat the day before that made me wake up with like swollen feet, or what kept me up all night that I couldn't go to sleep, or why am I late? Why am I early? Why am I fatigued? Why am I bloated? Like, just so many different factors play into that. And so when I noticed that I was nauseous, I noticed I was falling asleep on the couch at random. I was like, something's up. I think I'm pregnant, but I had never been pregnant before. We had never gotten a positive, despite all the years that we tried. It wasn't like we got a positive and then miscarried. It just never happened for us. So I knew something was different this time. So we did the Christmas workday, and it was for staff only. And that was on a Tuesday. And then Friday night, because Christmas all church day was
Yeah.
Saturday, I was like, I think I'm pregnant, and I know that if tomorrow I go to this all church work day, I'm gonna have to lift like lights,
Yeah.
Christmas trees. I'm gonna have to move furniture around when we're decorating the lobby. I was just thinking through all of that. I was like, if I'm pregnant, I don't want to lift heavy and be on my feet all day, and then risk losing this baby. So I went to the bathroom. It was like 10 o'clock at night. I went to the bathroom and I was like, let me just see if I'm pregnant. And I took the test. I almost threw it away
I'm sitting on the
because,
couch,
yeah, you're
just
on
I
the
like
couch just
watching
watching
TV or
TV.
something.
I just went to go use the bathroom. I didn't even tell you I was going to
Yeah.
go do that. It's just my mind was running. And I was like, I need to take this. I need to know before I go tomorrow because I don't want to risk it. I just had a feeling. So I go to the bathroom. I take the test. I look at it and almost throw it away. And then I was like, wait a minute. It always says not pregnant. But this time I didn't see the word not. So I had to like, I literally had my hand down like this to throw it in the garbage. And then I was like, and that's when you heard me scream and come out.
I thought something was wrong, and I remember you coming. Your parents came in the room because they heard you screaming, or something happened.
Yeah.
They were there, and I was just in shock. Like, obviously, you guys were all celebrating,
Yeah,
and
mom
like,
was like running and jumping everywhere.
I was just in shock. Like, I couldn't process it. And as I look back in life, like things that have happened that were big moments, I realized that that's normally how I
React?
react. I don't know, my body just takes a while to process it. So I remember you guys all just like, you thought it was funny that I was kind of like just
You
sitting
was
there
just completely
staring at it.
like just
I
staring,
was just in
smiling,
shock.
but still
Yeah, I was in shock.
nothing
So you
else.
can imagine like what we had been praying for 8 years, and like the money and the
And the doctors that
doctor's
kept telling
appointments and
me
just like
it's just not
e-
gonna happen.
everything, all for finally 8 years later to see like a positive result was like insane. And so um that was the beginning of another, basically another adventure.
Yeah.
So again, like going back to the thought of like the dreams you have as a kid, it's like, the dream you have is like you're pregnant, and then it's just you enjoy your pregnancy, and that wasn't the case. At least maybe at first it was, but it wasn't the case a little later. Like your pregnancy was horrible.
Yeah, I think that after I found out, literally like 2 days later, I started bleeding, and when I went in to go get my pregnancy confirmation, I told them that I was bleeding, and they were like, "That's perfectly normal. You might have just like, it might be lingering implantation bleeding." And because it's supposed to last a couple of days, but you can typically find out maybe 2 or 3 days after implantation whether you're pregnant or not. I don't know. They tried to explain it, and they thought that it was just normal, and I'm like, okay. So then it stopped for one day, and then it came back, but it was like with the
Bad.
vengeance. And I was like, I think I need to come back in. I'm bleeding again. And so they called me back in to check me out, and they were like, oh, we're just gonna put you on pelvic rest. And it just never stopped. It never
Yeah, it
stopped
was
after that.
brutal. It wasn't the fairy tale kind of pregnancy that you dream of as a little girl. And it was like from pelvic rest to pelvic rest, and then like off pelvic rest to then back on pelvic rest.
Then the vomiting started.
The vomiting
I
started,
was
the
on three
nausea.
different medications for that.
Yeah, I remember the did they try you with the patch first, the ear
No, I
patch?
had two different types of medication. Then they took me off of that for a second, and they put me on what typically most people take, which is the Unisym and the B6. And I was on that for like a week until they were able to prescribe me Bongesta and is it Zofran?
Yeah, and they all had like
And then they
crazy
put me on
side
the patch.
effects.
Yeah,
Like the ear thing started making
I was
you
dehydrated.
dehydrated, and you already have something that like robs all the water,
Yeah, the
all the
Sjogren's.
Sjogren's, it
Yeah,
takes all the water. So that was an issue. And then like just the vomiting was like unbearable. Like you're like
everything.
probably malnourished, I
About 7, yeah,
imagine.
my hair started falling out. Remember? My hair started falling out. My teeth started to decay at the bottom. I had like my throat was always like burning. It was disgusting. I just felt gross. I didn't feel good. I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't keep anything down. If I drank even water, that was it. Certain smells, I couldn't even like really leave the room. It's everything outside of the house, everything in the car, everything anywhere I went, stores, whatever, it just
Movement.
set
Like I
me off.
remember like having to be like barely go over speed bumps, could like had to turn super
Oh, when you
slow,
turn,
like
yeah.
anything would. And so like I don't know about you, but I'm sitting here again like almost like, God, I'm supposed to thank you for this, and I am really thankful, but this is not what I envisioned when I thought about this whole
Yeah.
pregnancy thing. Like this was supposed to be the end of that chapter. It's supposed to be like, now it's like the fairy tale, and it didn't go that
No,
way at
not at
all.
all. And in the midst of that, I kept thinking to myself, like, this is horrible. But everyone's like, oh, when you get into the second trimester, it'll go away.
Yeah,
So
that
I'm
was that
like,
was the new thing.
okay,
Remember I told you like the things people say, again, like well-meaning and stuff, but it sometimes it helps you, sometimes it doesn't. It was like,
yeah,
"Oh, just go through it," or like a lot of other things people would say were like,
eat
"Oh,
crackers. I
yeah,
used to get nauseous. I'm like, you don't understand.
yeah, it was eat
Crackers are
crackers,"
not doing anything.
or everybody had their own little hack that worked for them that didn't work for us. And
No,
and then there were comments like, like, don't worry, you'll feel better once you're holding him and stuff like that. Like I
yeah,
get it. they meant it and all that's true, but when you're in the moment, it's like you don't really want to hear that. Like you
Yeah.
just it's like I'd just rather not be nauseous and sick and all that.
Yeah.
And obviously like you're going through it, but I'm a type A personality.
Mhm.
I want to like I'm a problem solver.
Yeah.
That's me. And so like watching one of the worst things for me is when I can't literally can't do I can do almost anything and you know that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean I do it well. Obviously I do a lot of things bad, but I can at least try. Like
Yeah.
I will fix things even if it's horribly. I'll try to fix it. I I I try to fix what I can. And so when there's situations when I can't do anything at all, like when you're sick or when something's going on and I have zero control, it's so frustrating because I just have to sit there and watch.
Yeah.
And so to see you going through all that was like sometimes I was like I would tell God like I would much rather me
Aw.
be pregnant and be going through this just so because I feel like I'm tough enough to handle it even though you are too obviously, but I just felt like I would have rather suffered than watch you suffer.
Yeah.
And
It was miserable for me,
yeah, it was
honestly.
really brutal.
And I could see that, like when you would do things that are not in your element or in your character to do just to make me feel more comfortable and accommodate me. And so I saw that you were like just trying to find something to do to make me feel better. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I tell people all the time, like, I could not have done any of that without you. Like, God, literally, just during our interview, what was it, yesterday
Yeah.
at the foster interview? I mean, the adoption interview, I was telling her, I was like, God knew before He put us together what was in the future for us.
Yeah.
And I just cannot see any of the guys that I had ever picked in my life being able to go through something like that with me, you know? It's like God knew exactly what I needed and he like molded each of us individually and brought us together to ensure that we can get through all the things he was going to do in our lives together and still intact. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't make it out of any of that
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. I mean, because that's when things get hard, people just
Yeah. Like,
dip, especially when they don't have a strong commitment. But
yeah.
I saw that in my own parents growing up. Like I saw what it was to stick through hardship and difficulty with my dad being sick and my
Yeah.
mom hanging out. And it's weird because you almost want to honor her and celebrate her, but like that's common sense, right?
Yeah.
It's only like merited and like round of applause for you for doing that nowadays because it's so rare. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's what God intended when He created marriage is for that kind of like till death do us part thing. And
Yeah.
so it's like the same thing nowadays when people are like, you know, when someone's married like 10 years, it's like, oh wow, 10 years. And like, yeah, that's a big deal now, but back in the day, that was the norm. I mean,
Exactly. That's the intent.
so anyway, I don't feel like what I did or anything should be that celebrated just because it's what should be expected of a husband.
But it is appreciated.
I know,
I
and
do appreciate it.
I see, I get that. I get that. It's just, I wish more people thought, because you do the same for me in situations. I just think more, I wish more people just felt like that was common sense
Yeah.
and would do that. Um,
So,
anyway, so that was difficult. Like
well, I mean,
going,
it got worse from there. That's not where it ended. We had,
no,
was it December? The subchronic hemorrhage.
yeah, so I don't even remember how that started. I'm kind of blurry on that.
In December, the subchronic hemorrhage, where I think it was in the evening. Um, I was already on pelvic rest, but I'm still like vomiting and all of this stuff. And I go to use the restroom, and there's a lot of blood everywhere, like a ton everywhere, like I've never seen before.
Yeah,
And I call you over, like, Alex, come here.
yeah, and I remember seeing that much blood, and
Yeah.
I immediately thought we were losing him.
No.
You didn't, and we started just hugging,
Yeah.
and you said I think we need to go to the hospital, and I remember you like trying to reassure me, like quoting from Job again. I don't even know if you knew that was from Job or not or remembered, but you just say, look, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. And if no matter what happens, um, God's already done a miracle.
Yeah.
Like doctor said I couldn't get pregnant, and I did. And so I don't know what's gonna happen right now, but God's in control. And
Yeah.
so you were kind of comforting to me.
Yeah.
Um,
And I was trying to also like comfort myself a little bit. Although I didn't think we were losing him, I was just trying to like also keep hope alive for myself, where I was like, until someone tells me that this child is no longer gonna be in me anymore, like this child is alive and healthy, and they told me that this couldn't happen and no one can take this miracle away from me. So I was just kind of like trying to also like play that in my head as well, like God gave you this child, he is fine until God says that it's time for him to go. Like, don't speak that into his life. So I was like, let's just go to the hospital and see what they can do for us there. So
yeah, so we go to the
yeah.
emergency room. It's really not fun. Like most emergency rooms, it's cold. It's people are pretty numb, and it's just like it is what it is. And so I remember them sending a nurse back, and he kind of just checked on us, and he was like kind of in surprised by our hope.
Yeah.
And because we had just kind of always said like this baby from the beginning, since when we were praying for a baby, it was like this baby is going to glorify you, God. And so we like just double down on that. Like even in the emergency room, we're just telling them like we trust God. God did this. Doctor said that this would be impossible, so we're trusting God. I remember him like, yeah, amen, amen,
Yeah.
whatever. So they take us to the back, and they wanted after a while, because
Yeah. They
obviously
put like an IV in me, then
not
left us
everything
there.
not everything's immediate. So after a while, they want to do an ultrasound, and I remember them sending you back, but I couldn't go back. I don't get why, because
Me either.
it was just a regular ultrasound, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so that was like the longest 5 minutes of my life because I'm sitting there not knowing what's gonna happen. So I guess they do a regular ultrasound.
Yeah. And I see his little legs kicking and he's like turning his back towards us and then like turning back around and looking at us and then turning his back towards us and he's like moving around, moving around. I mean, like he's in place, he's just twirling like a little.
Yeah, he was always active, spinning and like acrobats in there. So when you come out, I'm like waiting to see your reaction. I didn't know if you were gonna be crying or so when I see you come out and you look decent, you kind of like smirk at me. I knew we were okay, and
Yeah.
so from that day, it's just like back on bed rest.
Well, this time it's strict bed rest, like shower, bathroom, appointments. Shower, bathroom, appointments. Like that's it.
Yeah, because basically, if not, the tear could have, because the hemorrhage is just a tear, which could have kept tearing, and it could potentially kill the baby or something. So it was like
Yeah.
strict bed rest, which obviously you lose your mind because you're an extrovert,
Yes.
and so you being not around people is like
It
brutal.
was driving me crazy the whole time.
And so they send us home, and then at some point we hear that the hemorrhage is okay.
Yeah, after our insurance. So I was only supposed to be on bed rest for like a month and a half or so, but because our insurance switched over, and then although the doctor that I was seeing showed up on the insurance platform as if he takes the insurance,
Yeah.
they actually didn't take the insurance. So I had to find another doctor and I had to wait an additional like 2 weeks before I got to see that doctor as a new patient, to get cleared off of bed rest. But eventually, when we went to go see him, he was like, well, you're clear. You can go back to doing normal things. Basically, like pretend you're on pelvic rest, but not bed rest. And I'm like, okay. He's like, just ease slowly back into things. I'm like, all right. So, like, that was probably Wednesday or Thursday. Sunday, I was back at church.
Saying hi to everybody, which is
Yeah.
like heaven for you.
But I was sitting down the whole time.
No, yeah, you
I
were
was in
being
the green
good. You were
room
being
and
good.
everyone kept coming back there to say hello to me. And then Monday comes.
Yeah, and Monday is
Yep.
like the second worst day of my life. So I'm at work, and I remember getting a call from you, and you say something like, I feel like I just, a little bit of liquid came out, so I'm gonna put my
Yeah.
legs up or
The
something.
amniotic fluid. I was like, I think amniotic fluid is dripping out of me. I'm just gonna lay down. But I was like nauseous, like extremely nauseous. So I like mid conversation, like while we were on the phone talking, I like sit up and then I start to vomit. But it was like the bag was getting so full that I was like, I need to go to the bathroom and like get the rest of this out. And I'm just like, what? And I'm like, I'm just gonna let you go. So like I hang up or whatever. You're like, oh no, you asked me, should I call my mom? And I was like, no, I'm fine. And I like hang up the phone. I go to the bathroom and I like get down on my knees and I'm like hugging the toilet. And when I'm done and I get up, I hear like a pop and a bunch of water just falls everywhere. So I knew my water had broken. So I called you back and I was like, call your mom, tell her to come to the house. I'm going to call 911. So I hang up. I'm sure you, when you hung up, you called your mom because she was here.
Yeah.
Like as soon as the ambulance got here, she was getting
Shout
here.
out mom.
Yeah.
My mom is the best.
Yeah. So she came. I got on the phone with 911 and we had already like the bassinet in the corner and I had already put like the little liner things down. Um, so I grabbed one of those, threw it on the bed. I had like all the stuff that came out of me, like all over my bottoms. So I took off my clothes and I put a dress on. Then 911, the lady on 911 told me to go unlock the door. So I went to go unlock the door and then I laid down and I pushed a little button for my feet to go up while I was on the bed until they came. And then when they got here, they had me walk to the front and because the little gurney thing couldn't get into the room just because of the way that it's angled there because our closet. Anyways, they had me walk up to the front. They put me on the gurney, and as soon as they're rolling me out, your mom's coming in, and in
And my
the
sister was coming too, right? Like I
I didn't get
remember.
to see your sister.
But my sister was flying there too.
Yeah,
So something like my mom was with my sister, and so they just like took off.
both
My
left at
sister
the same
was
time.
following.
I know that when the truck went around, I saw your sister pull in, but I didn't get to like talk to her or anything. I was I had only seen your mom, and then when they pulled me outside of the house is when we started that conversation about where they were gonna take me when I was on the phone with you and you were driving up and I was like, I think they're taking me back down.
Yeah, so I get that call and I immediately hang up with you, call my mom, and then I don't even remember leaving the office or anything. I'm just like,
Yeah.
next thing you know, I'm in the car and I'm flying home 'cause we live like 30 minutes from where we work. So I'm
On a
like,
good day.
yeah, so I'm like, and it was like lunchtime-ish.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I can cut this down to 15 if I just like floor it. So I'm like driving like a madman. I'm surprised I didn't kill anybody or crash or anything. Well, I'm not surprised. My driving skills are pretty phenomenal.
Oh my God.
But I just remember like screaming at God the entire car ride. I'm like beating on the steering wheel, like screaming at God, like you cannot be doing this. Are you like there's no way you're doing this. Please, I'm like begging him, like please don't do this. Don't do this. Like let me get there and it's a joke, or let me get there and like it's all good. Like don't do this. Like you cannot do this. I just remember repeating that probably 10 minutes from the job all the way up to like a highway where then you then call me and you're like, "Hey, they're going to take me to the hospital." That was all the way back by our job
Yeah,
again.
in Miramar, I was like the one of the guys. So there was three guys that came, one of which we got to see a little bit later. Then
Yeah.
there was another guy that was just kind of there, like we didn't interact too much. The third guy, he was a little bit older, but he was saying like, if my wife was going through this, I would want her to go to the hospital that she wanted to give birth at. So he called the chief, and they were all passing the phone around to each other and like getting permissions to drive me all the way down there because it's going to take a lot longer for this call, like the call that was made to come to completion. They're like, we're going to be out a little bit longer, we're going to have to drive all the way down there and then drive back up into our area. But they got permission and they drove me down to Miramar, and I was like, Alex, turn around. They're going to drive me back down that way. And the whole time I'm sitting there like obviously praying. I'm terrified. I'm like what is happening? What happens now? Like we had been going through so much that I had been looking up stuff and asking doctors questions and all of this stuff. I kind of knew what the plan was if I just continued to bleed, but nothing prepared me for if your water breaks. I didn't know what came
Yeah.
next. I didn't know what interventions they could do. I was just like, I guess, ignorant to the fact. So to me, it was like, I kept saying like, God, if there is an intervention for my child, only you know that, like in my head. And I kept saying to myself, if this had to happen so that I have to talk to somebody along the way, which is the same mindset we've had the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
then so be it. But I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you. And I just kept thinking that. And, the whole time we both knew that God had been talking to us. He was just comforting us and kind of forewarning us the whole time, like something might happen. So
Yeah,
I was,
we always felt that like we've I don't know, it's, some people can read God easily and they know exactly what he's saying. I've misheard him so many times that I know that I can mishear him. And so
yeah,
I just felt, yeah, I think we both knew something was up, but God was just reminding us, I'm gonna be there for you.
yeah.
But
So
something's up.
I didn't take it like something was going to happen. Like when my water broke, I just kept saying like there's an intervention for what happened. Again, being ignorant. And I just kept taking the fact that he was forewarning us and kind of letting us know that he was present as like, when this happens, do not freak out because I'm with you.
Yeah,
So I thought that that is as bad as it was going to get.
yeah.
And so
And
I
it,
was like, I'm just going to talk to everyone along the way. I'm going to be as pleasant as I can be. I'm going to represent you to the fullest and not let it seem like I don't have hope, because I did have hope. I did trust in him.
which you were like probably the best patient they've ever had. Like in typical you fashion, you're like apologizing that
I'm like, thank you so much. Can I have this?
you're
Oh, thank you. Blah,
apologizing
blah,
that
blah.
there's amniotic fluid on you, like you can control that. And they were probably like so like, but anyway, I get there before you. I get to the hospital, and it was just brutal waiting for you. And then finally you arrive, and I'm waiting outside, and now they don't know where they want to put you. I
No,
remember the paramedics knew where they wanted to put you, so they were putting you right into the like
the nurse,
the
the maternity center.
maternity
Yeah.
center. But the girl that's there is like how far along with you, and this was the rough part. It was like days, but you were like on date like a threshold of a matter
I
of
was 1 day
days
away. No, 1 day away
of a
from
day
being
from
able
being
to go
to
to
be
that.
in that room and treated. Otherwise, it was just like, oh, it's too early. You're just gonna like lose him in the waiting room,
Yeah.
basically. And so I remember like, because I'm like, wait a minute, because the date they had wasn't what we had been told by our doctor's office,
Yeah.
which the doctor's office date would have put us at. You're far enough along, you can go in there. So I'm calling them, and it's you're just like in limbo. You're on a stretcher in
Yeah.
like this room in like the lobby. And I remember calling the doctor's office, and I remember just like telling them like I'm
Send us
like
the
I'm
paperwork.
telling the lady at the front desk like, look, this isn't like funny games. Like this is literally life or death right now. I'm in a hospital. You need to like figure out what the paperwork. Why is there like misinformation here? What
Yeah.
there's things aren't adding up. And I remember like there was two people behind the counter, and I didn't know them, and I didn't know what they had to do with anything, but I just felt like God was working on something
Yeah.
because they had nothing to do with our office or anything. But all of a sudden, I hear them like, "We're calling our supervisors. Like, we're trying to make this work."
Yeah.
And like doctors, and they couldn't most of the time. They're so busy that they just can't get that involved.
Yeah.
And here were two people that were going above and beyond. And so I'm working on the phone with our OB. These guys are working with their supervisor at the hospital, and then all of a sudden, the nurse that had originally kicked us out just says like,
Oh yeah.
remember, she's
She
just
said
like,
like, well, first and foremost, let me rewind it back a little bit. The ride to the hospital, the guy that I told you I got to
yeah,
see later on. Little did I know, when he was driving back over there, he's like, "Yeah, I live in that area by
yeah,
that thing."
yeah,
And I asked him, I was like, "Have you ever heard of Oasis Church, which
yeah,
is where we both work at?"
yeah,
And in that conversation, because remember, I said, I'm going to talk to every single
yeah,
person is going to know that we are
yeah,
believers.
yeah.
So I asked him, and he was like, "Yeah, is that the one with the lights?" And I was like, "Yeah,
That's
we
what they
do the
all know
thing
us
for
for, the light
Christmas."
church.
So we were just having a conversation. He's married now, and I was just telling him like, this is what we do at our church. We do it every year. You should come visit us, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to check it out, blah, blah, blah. So the whole ride, we're having this conversation about church, how he grew up, how he came to find Oasis, how he's gone with his wife before, but he hasn't been back in a long time, that he lives in Miramar. He has no excuse, that he's going to try to go this year, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. So we're having that conversation. We get there, and I'm like, that's my husband. So, like, because you were coming up to the truck, and he's like, who is that? Because,
Yeah.
I was like, that's my husband. And so, whatever. I told him that you were the executive pastor there, and I gave him our church card because I had my purse with me. So
Yeah.
I gave him my church card. We get down, and then you're messing with all of those people trying to figure all that out. And the lady's like, take her back out to the emergency room. Like, mind you, the maternity area was completely empty.
There was nobody in
There
there.
was no one checked
Meanwhile, the
in
lobby
there.
was like full of
Completely
beds.
full. There was people in the halls and people in stretchers just waiting to get a room. And so, yeah, like he was working with that. Those other two people were like trying to figure something out. And then the lady said, I don't know why I was back there and something just moved me, told me to come back out here and pull you back here, that you belong back here.
Yep.
And she was just waving down the people that were working on the cause and trying to get the paperwork from my OB. And she was like, just bring her back here. So we went in there. I felt like I was VIP treatment
Yeah.
because there was no one in that
Yeah,
side.
she really didn't have to do that. She stuck her neck out for us. But that was
Yeah.
the thing is like we kept having over and over like these reminders that God was present.
Yeah.
So that was like not the first, that was one of many times.
Yeah.
Anyway, they take us back and I remember them doing a bunch of tests.
They had all the nurses that were on the floor on me. There was like 4 or 5 nurses and a doctor that were working on me all simultaneously, trying to take care of me at the same time.
Yeah, so the
Um,
doctor, so after tests and tests and tests and tests, my mom was there at that point, and I remember the doctor was just like, he was a good doctor.
yeah.
He was basically like, look, I'm gonna be like honest with you. Your water's broke. There's barely any water, amniotic fluid in there. At this point, we're at a 50-50 kind of survival rate, and
Yeah.
if you can make it a few days, you can make it to your next 50-50 chance.
Yeah.
And um, that's, I remember just like hearing that. And of course, you're like, okay, I got a 50% chance. But then to know if I pass this 50% in 3 days, it just hits another 50% chance.
Yeah. Because we had essentially, we had 2 weeks ahead of us in order for able to be considered viable.
Yeah, we
And
had to buy
so
2 weeks.
we
Two
had to
weeks is
hit,
what we were praying for.
yeah, we had to hit certain milestones before then to even be able, like, they had to do a, what is it? It's like an ultrasound, the one where they see like all the little bones and they
Hmm.
go through everything and they check everything. And they told us like we have to check that first to even see if you're gonna hit that first milestone.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I remember having to break that news to your parents, to your
Yeah, my
sister,
sister.
to my mom, and literally again, it's like I don't know how I made it through that day other than God was giving me the strength and the words. Like I remember being able to comfort them somehow, and I was
Yeah,
just like, look, if this is God's plan for this all, I need to learn to be okay with this.
yeah,
Not that it's going to feel good. Like God's plans for our lives don't always feel great, but if we trust that He's working all things for good, then this is His perfect plan.
yeah,
And I need to learn to be okay with that. Doesn't mean I need to like it maybe in the moment, but I need to learn to be okay with that and trust that God is working. And so that was it. I mean, then they took us what to upstairs and
well,
we
yeah, when they were taking us upstairs. So there's a floor that's specifically for the maternity emergencies that are admitted. And then the floor above it, there's 2 rooms that are overflow rooms. That floor was completely full, so they took me to the overflow room upstairs where there was no one else on that floor for maternity emergency.
we just had a tornado alert.
Yeah.
All right, we're good.
Should we go take shelter?
No, we're fine.
Are you sure?
Yeah, we're fine.
It says to go take shelter. Anyway, so they put me. There's a floor for maternity emergencies, so they take me to the overflow, which is the rooms above it, like the floor above it. And there's only 2 rooms in that floor for maternity emergency, and there was no one in the other room. So I was up there again
Mm-hmm.
with the people that are on that floor for maternity emergencies, all taking care of me. There
Yeah.
was no one else on the floor, and they don't share the people on that floor with the people below, just because of the like the sensitivity and the, I guess, how serious the maternity emergency admission is. So they don't share those nurses and those doctors with the ones downstairs. It's just the nurses that are upstairs are just for that floor. So I had all those nurses constantly coming in and checking in on us and paying very special attention to us, and we're like, I
Yeah, they
felt
were
literally like VIP the whole time.
they were really good. That hospital was great, but it was just then we started involving our church and social media. It was just like, guys, we need a ton of prayer,
Yeah.
we need a lot of help. So we spent basically 3 days there, and in that process, we met like the first lady who like you remember she came the next day even though she was off.
Oh yeah, the
Like
lady
she
that kept making us go, that
well,
eventually told us to come back to the
yeah,
maternity
so the
place.
one that originally said, I think there's something special about you. I don't know what it is, but I just feel like I need to take you. She wasn't a believer or anything like
Yeah.
that, but so she comes back the next day and she's off and she said, I just needed to visit you guys. You guys are so special.
Yeah.
Again, obviously nothing special about us. It was God
Yeah.
working in her and just put that burden
Yeah,
on her
she's like,
heart.
sometimes God just, yeah, she said, sometimes God just puts people in my heart, and I just felt that there was something so special about you guys, and I needed to come and let you guys know that I'm praying for you.
Yeah.
I'm
So
like, okay.
then we meet a doctor who we end up finding out is a believer, is a Christian,
Yeah.
and
Her husband's a pastor as
her
well.
husband's a pastor local to the area, and they're friends with us now.
Yeah.
We met them in that situation, but I told her when we went to dinner after this whole thing how much of an encouragement she was to us
Yeah.
because it was like, again, she was another nudge from God. It was like a wink from Him,
Yeah.
like I'm here. So we meet her, and then the last person I remember that was super impactful that we
The
meet
midwife
is the
nurse.
midwife nurse who basically was never supposed to come in on that day. It was like a
No.
Friday. She
She,
never comes
yeah,
Fridays
she
or
said
something
she
like that.
never works Fridays. It is not on her schedule. She was called in because somebody else was called out. And that when she does come in, she doesn't even work on that floor.
Yeah.
So she was kind of like telling us like how upset she was that she was there. But she was like, but I know it's intentional.
Yeah, so then she says, I show up and there's two of you on this floor, and I just let the other nurse pick who she wanted. The other nurse picked the other person.
Yeah, by that time, somebody else was next door
So
now.
I have you. And
This is like day 4 or 5.
thought it was four. It was four. It was four.
Yeah.
It was four. So she was just an encouragement to us too. We learned she's a Christian,
Yep.
a prayer warrior, and she just talks about like I'm gonna be praying for you guys. I'm gonna tell my church to be praying for you guys, and
Mm-hmm.
she was just really great. Well, that day we get discharged,
Yeah.
and the goal is basically you need to last like another week
Week
and a
and a half.
half or something. If you can do that, Abel will be viable, and if you go into labor, um, we can try to save him. And the reason you hadn't gone into labor this time is they had you on medicine those
Yeah.
3 days that basically stopped you from doing that. But
Yeah.
obviously, they could only put you on it for 3 days, and so we were sent home. And the hope was, um, we'll see you in a week and a half, or even beyond that.
Yeah. They told me just be on strict bed rest. Mind you, this whole time we're meeting people that are reminding us that God, when you pray for people when they're about to go into surgery or they're sick, and you're like, God, surround them with the best nurses, the best
Yeah,
physicians. Those are your hands working in them. And I literally felt like that's exactly what was happening. It was like God reminding us, like, I'm surrounding you with people that not only have the knowledge medically to take care of you, but also have the faith to pray over the
with you. Yeah,
situation with you. And in that, he kept reminding us that he was surrounding us with people like that, but then he was also reminding us the impact that Abel, I mean, then we didn't know his name was going to be Abel, but the impact that he was making in our community. Like, people kept reaching out to us on social media, like people that have never shared their story, similar stories, Never with anyone, just not their families, not their friends. It was just them and their husband knew what had happened to them. They were sharing their stories with me for the first time and finding healing in that, talking to somebody about it, trying to encourage me, help them heal a little bit. There were people that stopped praying or turned their backs on God when they went through that, and they were telling me like, sharing with you, it's doing something in me. Or they would be like, I haven't prayed since that happened to me, but I feel like I need to start praying again. There were people that just had not gone back to church or read their Bible or anything, like not even watching any like a service at home, and they were just saying to me like, just seeing how you and Alex have been all week and the faith that you guys have kept, I need that.
Which
And
again
so
was like, so it was not like I had no strength. It
yeah, it was
was
hard
it was not us. It wasn't us. It was
at
God
all.
working through us. And so yeah, we were seeing God use this
Working.
really horrible situation. So we get home and we make it what six,
Just a couple
seven
of hours, yeah.
hours. I mean, by
Well, I started contracting and then I tried to go to sleep. And then I
yeah,
woke up in the middle of the night like, oh, this is bad.
yeah. We weren't even sure if they were contractions. We
Yeah.
didn't know what was going on or whatever.
Just very
I
painful.
remember like you couldn't get up at that point. It was hard for you to get up and off the bed, and so it was like in the middle of the night. I was like taking the legs off of our bed so that you didn't have to climb in and out because we were finally home after 4 days. It was going to be
Yeah.
like hopefully the long haul, and well then you woke up out of like a dream. You had
Yeah.
like a some kind of nightmare
The
that you were losing him.
yeah, that I was bleeding, and Ellen Sam was my doctor in the dream. She works with something completely different, but in the dream she was my doctor and she was delivering the baby, but I was losing him. I was bleeding a lot. And I woke up and I said, "Alex, I think that I'm miscarrying. I think we need to go to the doctor."
Yeah, so we just start driving to the emergence. We start driving to the hospital that they said to go to. So, um, they had said if you go into labor, don't come back here because we can't do anything. We just
Go
don't
to
have the
regional.
equipment and stuff. You need to go to another one where they will be able to do it. So we just start driving and I remember putting on worship music in the car ride and we're timing your contractions and they're like falling right in line. Anyway, we get to the hospital and basically you were in labor at that point. I
Yeah.
mean, they took you in and
They
they
checked me
checked
out
you and they're like,
and then they put me in a room.
yeah,
Yep.
put you in a room. And that was probably 3 in the morning, two in the
I got
morning or
admitted at
something,
like 3. Yeah.
3 in the morning. And before I know it, it's like 8 o'clock and I mean, a lot of people don't realize you like pushed him. It was labor, it was active labor, like delivery.
They
Remember
couldn't get me an epidural
they couldn't
cuz
get you the epidural
we
because
had
the
just been
doctor,
discharged
we,
from my regular OB, the one that was supposed to deliver the baby, because I was high risk and my water broke. When we got discharged from the hospital from that stay, remember you had to go downstairs and sign paperwork saying that where they're releasing me as a patient
yeah.
and I need to go find a high risk doctor. Well, since we got back that night, it's like I didn't have time to go find a high risk doctor, so they had to call whoever was on call to do it, but he was delivering another baby.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
remember them basically they kind of wanted to they were kind of leaning towards, hey, we
oh,
could
a
just end
DNC.
this.
Yeah,
And I remember both of us were like, we're not doing that. Like if God wants to do that, that's on him, but we're not doing that. Which is easy for me to say because I didn't have to go through it, which obviously it's like you were giving me my flowers earlier, but like the fact that you stuck through. It's one thing to have a moral stand and like believe something, but then have to face it, and you did, and you just said, we're gonna try to deliver,"
yeah.
and so we did,
They made me sign
and
my paperwork saying that it's baby's life over mine.
yep,
Then they
and
took me
so
to the
you were
room
in
in the back.
labor for like 4 hours, no medicine till the very end, um, and finally when the doctor was able to come in, you had been pushing for so long. you didn't really know how to push because we weren't prepared for this. Like
Yeah.
we didn't know. Again, this wasn't like fairy tale pregnancy. It's not like we went to classes and it was just like it was too early. You would never
Yeah.
expected we were going to be doing this. So by the time the doctor comes in,
I was
remember he
dilated.
said which I want to rewind a second because I forgot this point. Remember when you wake up from that nightmare and we start heading to we're about to get in the car and you get a
Oh,
text message
yes.
from the nurse, that last Christian nurse that I would talk about. It was like 2 in the
No,
morning.
she called my
Well,
phone.
we see a missed call from her, yeah, and
And I
we're
was like,
like,
what in the world? And I texted her. I was like, hey, did you mean to text me? Like, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, I don't know you.
yeah.
I know you didn't mean, like, why are you texting me? And she was like, oh, it was an accident. Like, I was praying for you. And she went through her phone to make sure she, like, remembered my name. And I was like, you wouldn't believe it, but I'm on my way to the hospital now, blah, blah, blah.
So again, it was like God is reminding us, hey,
I have
this
you.
is I'm here. Like ugly or not, at this situation, I'm here with you. I don't know if that's still to this day. I don't know what's more comforting. I used to tell people early on when
Really?
this happened. I used to tell people early on when this happened. I feel like my theology would have comforted me more in the sense of like it almost would have felt better. I mean, now I'm in a different place, but when it first happened, I was telling God like it almost would have felt better if I could have said you were just busy. Like you
Yeah.
were out doing things and it kind of like by the time you were able to turn your back and see us, it was done. But the fact that you were there and just watching was really painful
Yeah.
in the early days. Like you're sitting on your hands, like you're reminding us you're here, but you're not doing anything. Why are you doing this? Like it's almost like seeing a kid drowning in the pool, and you're. It's easier to say the parent didn't realize it, but to say something like the dad was sitting there watching is like sick.
Yeah.
And God's kind of healed my heart from that. Now I'm in a better place where I realize I much rather would have I much rather would have. I'm glad he did what he did. I'm glad I didn't do it alone. I'm glad his presence was there
Yeah.
because the truth is, life has to happen sometimes and things have to go wrong. And I'd rather him be with me than not with me.
Yeah. The
But
one thing,
anyway, we knew on even the car ride to this hospital that God's with us through that lady.
yeah. One thing that sucked for me was that the whole time since the day we found out that we were pregnant, I just kept begging God, like, please let this be a full term baby. Like, please don't let me live a nightmare that I've seen other people live through. It's my mom, she had a stillborn and she also had miscarriages and stuff. And I was like, I never want to experience that. So, although I didn't really even think about the view that you just shared, but in my head I was like, how could you do the one thing that my whole life I have asked you never to do to me? Like, why do I have to go through this and live with this for the rest of my life? Like, it just didn't make sense to me. And since then, you know, God has definitely like told me to shut up because he's been with me the whole time. But that's where I struggled with what was happening. Like, that was something that was going through my head. I was just like, I cannot believe that this is happening. Like, up until that point, I felt like all that warning was telling me to not freak out when the moment came. But then when it just kept getting worse and worse, and then that moment came, and I knew there was no turning back because they didn't consider him viable because of one day. That was really painful. I was like, how can you allow this to happen? And not that he was
Especially,
watching and just wasn't doing anything. I just felt like, man, it's the one thing I entrusted you with, like, wholeheartedly, like the one prayer that I said, please don't do. And I just was so confident that you would never make me go through that. And then it happened.
Yeah, and the fact that one day thing killed me. It's like God, you couldn't wait one day. Like God of the universe, who didn't have to even lift a finger to create the things that blow our minds, things that scientists still can't understand. You just spoke it into existence. Like, I know the power you have, and you're telling me you won't wait 24 hours was like really, it that unsettles you.
Yeah.
So you were in labor for 4 hours and you pushed, and by the time the doctor came, he said something along the lines of, I was right about to leave, but I figured I'd just pop in here and check, which
Yeah.
again was like, thank you, God. And he takes a look, and again, I've always been grateful for just like blunt doctors.
Yeah, he was very
Not rude
straightforward.
doctors, but just
No,
doctors that will
honest,
just give you the
straightforward.
truth and they won't kind of sugarcoat things. He just says, "Look, I'm looking in there, and he's already
He's on his way out.
he's out already. I mean, if you give one push, he'll come out." And he something like he's been out, but you just need one more push. He was in your
He was heading down my canal.
he was yeah
So he wasn't in where he was supposed to be. I feel like he said that his head and his shoulders were already like coming out. So he's like, I'm gonna have to go in there and you're gonna have to push. So they're like, trying to teach me how to push because still like,
yeah
it's 5 months. We hadn't taken any classes on how to push or anything. We didn't expect this to happen. So he tells me to push. He goes in there and he pulls him out. And they ask like, do you want to cut the umbilical cord? Do you want to hold your baby? And I'm like, yeah, we're gonna, prior to this, that week that we were in the hospital, we were talking about how we're not gonna let this be a traumatic experience where it's like one thing after the other and doctors and nurses are dictating what we get to do and experience.
yeah
And we said, if this happens, if we have to cross that bridge, cut the umbilical cord. Let's hold our baby. Let's pray together. Let's spend time with the baby. Like we wanted to experience that moment in a pot. We don't want to look back and think like, oh, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. We wanted to be able to say like we did what we needed to do to part ways with our child.
yeah. Like as brutal and traumatic as we knew it was, like to see it and experience it in the moment, I would have rather I wanted to deal with the pain in the moment and not 30 years from now regretting I didn't see him and stuff. So that's what we did. He came out, and still to this day, some of the images that haunt me is that he was still like,
Like
I don't know if it was breathing or moving, but
gasping, yeah.
there was like life in him still. And so we took a minute just to we cut the umbilical cord, and you held him and I held him, and we prayed with him. We were praying
Yeah.
for him literally until he stopped moving.
Yeah.
And the hospital there was really great. They they were good about it, and
They
then we
gave us
just
as much time as we needed with him. They're like, take your time. They didn't kick us out the room. They didn't make us feel like another number or another like dollar sign. They were like, just take as much time as you need. Do you want pictures of him?
yeah, we took that.
Yeah.
We took so much time with him. We spent hours there,
Yeah.
um, just looking at him. He looked a
Yeah.
lot like us.
A lot like you. He had your arms, your legs, your knees, everything. He looked just like you, except with my nose, my wide nose.
I remember
That
them
was it.
saying he was big for his
Yeah, she's like,
age,
he's huge for his age. I was gonna be a big boy. And
and
I was like, God, if we were further along than what doctors told us, I'm gonna be so upset.
yeah, that was
um,
the other thing. It was like the margin of error could have been that he was viable.
yeah,
Now, obviously, that's not. There's no point of talking even about that. But
yeah,
we spent the time with him, hours,
yeah. We were there like 5 to 7 hours, I believe.
and they did some stuff for us, and we have pictures of him and stuff. Um, I
Rachel's
just
Gift, I think it's called Rachel's Gift. It's a ministry that
yeah
provides like information about infant loss and grief and things like that. And the doctor had a lady come in and take pictures of him and put that together like The little clothes that they put on him, they put it in the box as well. They gave us some keepsakes. Yeah.
I just remember at one point we just like realized we're like he's not there anymore. Like
Yeah.
it's just his body. And so we're like we're good. We don't need to be here anymore. You always know the truth, but sometimes you got to remind yourself of that. So we just said, you know what? Um, let's just go. That's not him. He's he's in heaven. That's the beauty of the truth that we know is that the second he stopped breathing with us, he, and he opened his eyes again, he's with Jesus. That's the truth that my grandma held on to. It's the truth that I wish a lot of people believed and knew. There's just a lot of people that don't have that hope, and they don't know it. That they don't have that promise to be able to be in the presence of God when they go. And so we knew that was the case for us. That Abel would be fine. We actually didn't even remember we didn't have a name when we went there.
No, no, you had a couple of names in mind, but when they gave us the paperwork to sign and they asked what his name was, I turned to you and you said Abel, and I was like, yeah, that's perfect.
We knew, that name is a biblical name. We wanted to have some meaning. And it's weird that it was one of our options even before this whole thing because it means like life is a vapor, how short life is.
Yeah.
And so that's why we knew immediately. And once we kind of decided we were going to go, they ended up taking him. They wheeled him out and they were really like respectful of him. And then it was just coming home again to an empty house. To the room that we had been preparing for him and stuff. Like I remember putting wallpaper on his wall, make it nice. We wanted to change it for him so it wasn't like Rome's room, it was his room.
Yeah. New rugs, new everything. All the stuff that people had gotten for him. Everything was just like in the room.
Somebody said recently he's an acquaintance of ours. We've known him since he was young and he's gone through something semi similar. But he posted the other day, I don't know if you saw it. He asked his therapist once, when does it stop hurting? And the therapist says it stops hurting when you stop caring.
Wow.
And I'm never going to stop caring.
Yeah.
So I'll always live with this hurt. And it's been a while now, so it's obviously a little bit more bearable. Even though I'm crying now, I wouldn't have been able to even talk about this. But I just, I'm thankful that we can rest on the truth that he's in a way better place. His room is a lot better than what I could have given him.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't want to. It sounds weird, but prior to this, I was cool with my life here. Like there was heaven could have waited a long time. I would have been
Yeah.
okay with that. Nowadays, I still enjoy my life here. Obviously, I don't want to go anytime soon, but I have a hope now, even more so than Jesus.
To see Abel.
Yeah, I have something to look forward to be able to hear his voice and see what he would have looked like and stuff. So, I don't know why. Still don't know why God did it. I know a lot of reasons I could justify it and like make it feel good. right? We know the lives that have been impacted. We've literally seen people
Get baptized and everything
come
after
to the
that.
Lord and be baptized because of Abel's story. But still, I'm like, okay, God, but you, again, who spoke things into existence, couldn't think of any other way. Like, you really couldn't, you couldn't do it another way. But he did. And, I'm just, we sing songs all the time, like, is he worthy and stuff like that? He is. Is he worthy of my child? Yeah. I was thinking of like Abraham and Isaac, like God asking Abraham, like, "Will you give me your son?" And everybody celebrates Abraham for being willing to do that. We didn't really have a choice, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna leave God over this. So he's worthy. He's Abel was his before he was mine. So he can have him back if he needs him.
Yeah. I mean, we always said no matter what, and I think it's something that we kept saying to remind ourselves is that God is good, and that is a fact.
Yeah.
That's a biblical fact. Even if things don't feel good, God is good. And He has a purpose and a reason for everything. And He didn't mean to purposely hurt us, He didn't want us to be in so much pain. But there was something that we can't see, whether that be now or later, that this had to happen. But we always had to remind ourselves that God is good and that He was with us and that He's still with us and He still continues every single day to remind us of that fact that He hasn't forgotten us and He's not just leaving us in our pain by ourselves, and that our child is with Him for eternity, just singing His praises, happy, never having to have suffered here or endured anything that we had to deal with every single day.
Yeah, I'm
And
really grateful for that.
my selfishness wants Him here. My
Yeah,
selfishness thought that I can give Him the best love, the best care, the best life, the best memories. I'm sorry.
you don't have to apologize.
But I know that that's just my selfishness, you know? God is there with Him, and I'm down here, and He's doing better than me. And
Yeah, he's doing better than us.
and we'll see Him again someday. But while we're here, God is still with us, and He's holding us and putting one foot in front of the other every day, helping us just get through this.
Yep. So, in the meantime, we're back to doing what we can do, fostering and looking into adoption, even though it's like $50,000.
Really
We're
expensive.
just we're just trusting that if it's God's plan, that He's gonna provide some way. Um, and just remembering Abel. I don't think many women would be able to go through what you've gone through. I know a lot of women have in their own story, but it takes a strong woman to be able to endure this. And so I'm glad to be able to do it with you. And I've always told you that if it's just us forever, I'm cool with that. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't marry you to be my baby factory. I married you for you. And if God gives us a baby to be able to take care of and raise, then awesome. If not, His plans are good. They are. And I have to learn to be okay with that. And I think we're doing better nowadays.
We have a lot more good days than bad days. And
Yeah.
on the bad days, he he really reminds us that he's with us in the most extraordinary ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're doing a lot better. Just It's a peace that surpasses all peace. You read that over and over and over and over again, but when you go through situations like this, it really becomes true to you, and you really you really understand what that means. It's like,
Yeah.
how can I get through another day? And it's just God. It's
Yeah.
just God.
So that's our story.
Abel's story.
The Abel story
Yeah.
that we got to be a part of.
From We didn't even mention the fact that when we first went to go see his heartbeat, the doctor was like, the sac is empty, like you might have an ectopic pregnancy, there's nothing there, or whatever he said. I don't even remember, but it's just from the beginning to end, God just continued to show up. Things did progress, but God kept giving us hope. And then, at the end of it, despite him taking him, he still gave us hope for tomorrow, just to continue to walk, to continue to be faithful to him, and that he was just going to continue to be faithful with us.
Yeah, so that's part of our story.
Mm-hmm.
And the hope is that this encourages somebody. Maybe it doesn't even encourage somebody, but it just helps them to be able to relate. Or maybe I don't know, for some, it's like they can thank God that their situation's not as bad as ours.
Yeah.
However it encourages or helps somebody, I think that's a good thing that God can take a mess and use it for good.
Yeah, and to
And so,
remember to always, I say one big takeaway from all of it is to just always remember that there was a purpose behind everything that happens. And when you're going through something, at least for me, remember to look up at those around you, because someone's eternity could be at stake. And the only way for someone's eternity to be able to be turned around and for them to hear about Christ is through whatever pain you're going through.
yeah,
And so to just always just look up, look outside of yourself, despite whatever pain you're going through. Look outside of yourself and try to represent Christ as much as possible in the best way as possible. Because if you remain faithful to him, he's going to remain faithful to you. And despite whatever, like, horror story you go through, like, this was a nightmare to us. We knew that he was with us, and it kept us going every single day. And we saw what he was doing through it.
yeah,
And so it also provided comfort.
yep.
Yeah.
Until next time,
Hopefully, we'll have better stories.
for real. That's a wrap.